Why is the dream of a Sikh homeland most alive among those who live thousands of miles away from it?
The answer to that is actually pretty simple. It's because it can. In the West, we have democratic freedom. We have freedom of speech. You can state pretty much anything you want, and you can campaign for pretty much anything you want, as long as obviously it doesn't break the law. In India, you can't do that. It is not as visible in India, primarily because you can't. You don't have that same sort of democratic freedom, sadly, despite the fact that India does like to claim itself as the world's largest democracy. And the real question is, I mean, how big, actually, how inset is the pro-Khalistan movement in the Punjab? Now, of course, it is very visible, it is very loud in the diaspora. But within the Punjab itself, the Indian government does go to great pains and great lengths to claim that it is just a fringe movement. It is just a fringe bunch of terrorists, essentially, is what they claim. And yet evidence actually states very clearly otherwise. For example, the support that comes from, it's seen as a proxy in many ways for a lot of unresolved issues that still linger in Punjab. I've talked about the lack of autonomy, but there's also things like its riparian right. In other words, its river waters, which are seen to be exploited by Delhi, by central government. So again, the whole pro-Khalistan movement is saying, look, you are exploiting our resources, including our rivers, our river water, that we want control of. We want full decision-making, policy-making over our own rivers. Likewise, our agricultural economy, which again has been rather exploited by central government. Punjab is the breadbasket of India. And people in Punjab say, you are exploiting our natural resource to feed the rest of India, fine, but we're not getting sufficient compensation in return. We are not getting the recognition that we should for essentially feeding the rest of India. Likewise, there's the old historic issues like 1984, Operation Blue Star, the genocide of November 1984 that followed, etc. But also things like we have every year, talking about 1984, at the Golden Temple, there's always an annual demonstration and prayers to commemorate the awful loss of life during Operation Blue Star at that location. But very prominent in those protests, those demonstrations, and the prayers that follow, there's always pro-Khalistan flags. There's always pro-Khalistan slogans, and of course Bindran Vali, the gentleman sitting behind me, his portrait features very highly. So again, you can see infused and totally inherent in everything that structures Punjabi life. There is this Khalistan theme, this pro-Khalistan theme, that is still very much, I would say, like a rod of iron holding up the backbone of Punjabi social feeling. So really, just to summarise, yes, the pro-Khalistan support is very visible in the West because the diaspora support it, obviously, and it is very visible because they can do relatively safely, democratically speaking. It is not as visible in the Punjab, despite the fact, all the evidence proving that it follows huge support amongst the people of Punjab, but it is not as visible because of the oppression, the persecution from the Indian state, that whereby any talk of secessionism is deemed illegal, and therefore you may end up in prison.